Well, we come to the fourth part of the Mass in slow motion, where the celebrant goes to the chair. And um, just to review, the opening gathering rite, so to speak, the people gather in the church, and then there is the procession where Christ, like a great bridegroom, comes among his people, and the priest, if you will, signifies him coming in to be with his people. And then the priest reverences the altar for all the reasons stated in those videos and flyers. And at times, not in every Mass, but special Masses, he'll also incense the altar. Having reverenced the altar, having the procession and the reverencing of the altar and the various things, he now comes and he takes a seat at the celebrant's chair. Now, in every Catholic sanctuary, there is a priest chair of some prominence, not a throne-like. We'll look at that more in a moment. But also the deacon's chair is next to him, and because sometimes there can be two deacons assisting, in our parish, we have not just the celebrant's chair, but two deacons' chairs on either side. And then there's other seating in the sanctuary for other ministers of servers and other, maybe sometimes there are celebrating priests and so on. But the celebrant's chair has some prominence. It should be say, oh yeah, that's clearly a special chair. That's not just like any other chair or any other pew in the church. All right, and now the idea then of a chair is not just so he can sit. So that's lovely, but there's more symbolism than that. Somebody might wonder, well, why does he have to sit up there in a special chair? Why can't he just sit among the people of God? What makes him so special? It isn't the priest as a man, it's who he symbolizes. It's Christ. And also the office of the priest, which is, we'll look at also the office of bishop with the cathedra in a moment too. So again, just take note that all of these are, the chair isn't just because, Father Pope's such a great guy, I got 2 master's degrees or whatever. No. I mean, it's who I represent, it's Christ. And also the office, not me personally, but the office of the priesthood and particularly the fullness of the priesthood, the bishop. All right. So the other thing, though, we want to let's look at some of the history also of the use of the chair. First of all, I think in the ancient world, chairs were not just something you sat on, but it would be a symbol of authority. You can think of maybe a couple of examples we still have left today. There's the judge's bench, where he is seated prominently in the courtroom, usually in an elevated platform. And then we also have other understandings like the word chairman of the board, chairperson, and so on. Chair meaning one who has a certain special authority, okay? Now, there's also, though, a connection in the ancient world with a chair and with teaching. It's our usual experience in the modern world, at least here in America, that teachers who give lectures, say at a college or other things, are usually stand at a podium and they're standing and they teach in that manner. But in the ancient world, it was more common for teachers to be seated, not in some casual way, sipping coffee with their legs crossed and saying, well, let's talk about the topic. But rather in a more formal way, that there was some teaching authority being emphasized. And so if this is true that ancient teachers would be seated to teach, then this also indicates that the chair in the sanctuary is also a symbol of teaching authority, not just the fact that the celebrant presides over the assembly in the role of, like I say, of some authority, teaching, governing, and sanctifying, but also that he's there to teach. All right. Now, let's give you a couple examples. This is true of Jesus. We always think of him as standing to preach, but no, it almost always says he was seated. I'll give you a couple of examples. This is from Matthew chapter 5. It says, Jesus went up the mountain, and after he had sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. Okay, so there's a seated position from which he would teach. Or again, another example, this would be in all the synoptic gospels. When he went to the synagogue, it says, he rolled up the scroll and handed it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all in the synagogue looked intently at him, and he began to teach them, saying, "This scripture passage is today fulfilled in your hearing." But he would sit in the synagogue to teach. Okay? So this idea of teaching authority, this idea of just authority in general, a kind of a governing authority that priests have by office, bishops have. We'll look at the bishop's chair in just a moment. But we have then this image or symbol of authority, but also particularly of teaching authority as well. Now, generally today, priests are expected to stand at the pulpit and preach, but bishops always have the option of having a chair brought to the center of the sanctuary, or to preach from the cathedra, the chair of the bishop in the cathedral, or something that's sometimes called a fold stool. It's a kind of a collapsible chair that's brought out and it can be put in front of the altar, and the bishop can teach. In America, generally, our bishops do teach standing, only for very special things like ordinations and other types of, when they celebrate the consecration of religious or so on. These very formal liturgies is the bishop seated to teach and preach. But generally in our culture, we see that there is standing that's done to teach. Now, let's talk a little bit about then the bishop. The bishop of any diocese has a cathedral, and the word it's a kind of a cathedral is just a fancy way of saying the church of the chair. Cathedra or cathedra in Latin refers to a very formal chair. There's other words for chair, but cathedra is a Latin-based word that means again this is the formal chair, or like a place of authority or governance and so on. So the cathedral is the church of the chair, and in every cathedral there is a prominent chair that you'll see it in the flyer that comes with this video, a picture of the cathedra at St. Matthew's Cathedral here that currently belongs to Cardinal Gregory. And it has, there's a certain like throne-like quality to it, but not excessive, But it has some prominence, some permanence. This is a marble chair. It's not easily moved about. It has a fixed quality. And these things are important because this is a symbol of stability, of office, and so on. And we see that. As a general rule, only the cathedral would have this. There are a couple of exceptions. In our diocese, there's one also at the Basilica, the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. Why is this? Well, because bishops come from all over the world, and this, but particularly for all the American bishops, the Basilica is something where each of them can exercise their office there. Usually, if a bishop goes to a diocese other than his own, unless he has permission, he wouldn't sit in the bishop's chair of that diocese. But at the Basilica, there's an exception because, again, all the American bishops contribute to the upkeep of this national basilica. So there is a cathedra there. It isn't related to any particular bishop, but any ordinary or bishop who's the head of a diocese can sit in that chair. No ordinary priest would ever sit in there on that cathedra, but only bishops would do that. And in the cathedral, no one else but the bishop takes to that seat. If there's a priest celebrating Mass and there's no bishop there, he would not sit in the cathedral. There's another chair he'll use. Okay, so that's just something special about the cathedra, or the chair of the bishop that is in the cathedral, the church of the chair. Now, regarding, though, one last thing just to say about the chair. I'm going to read to you from the general instruction in the Roman Missal. And it says, so regarding a little bit about the design of the chair, not the bishop's cathedral per se, this would be the ordinary celebrant's chair. Some people like to call it presider's chair, but anyway. We used to just sometimes call it the sedilia, the place where the priest was seated. Nevertheless, it gives an instruction. It says this: the chair of the priest must signify his office of presiding over the gathering and of directing the prayer. But any appearance of a throne is to be avoided. Okay, So again, you notice the chair should have some prominence. It should have some particular design that sets it apart, but not a throne-like design. We had a problem in the 70s and 80s where a lot of times the priest chair was put up in the center on what used to be the old high altar, and the tabernacle was removed to the side, and the priest chair took its place. And I'm like, ah. And I thank God I think for the most part we've gotten over that. It sure does start to look like a throne when you go up steps to this chair in the center, and the tabernacle that used to be there has been booted aside. Ooh, bad move. The chair should be prominent. It could be in the center behind the altar in newer churches, but at the end of the day, normally it's off to the side, and that makes more sense. We want the altar and the tabernacle to really be central. And yes, the priest who is also a sacrament of the presence of Christ should have a prominent chair as well. But I think dead center is generally not good, although it is permitted. And I'm not here to say that all churches that have this, are in trouble or doing something wrong. So we'll leave it at that for the chair. It's a sign of office. It isn't just a chair, any ordinary chair for a priest to sit in. Just bring him a folding chair. Who cares? No. He's to sit in a chair of some prominence without a throne-like quality. It reflects his office. We also saw in this video that the chairs in general in the ancient world indicated both authority in general and also in a particular way teaching authority. Teachers would be seated to teach. And all of these things are brought in. Now, the priest is in a threefold role as a priest. The priests are to teach, govern, and sanctify. So these roles of authority are that we are to celebrate the sacraments, sanctify. We are to teach, preaching and teaching. And to govern, that is to say, we're to oversee a parish as pastors and shepherds. So all of these offices are folded into that, and that the chair represents all of these together. The office of the priest, not just the man. It's not about the man. It's about the office and the respect due to that because of the way that Christ acts through the priest. And so today, the priest, our topic today in this video is the priest goes to the chair, not just to cool his heels, but for all the reasons stated, he goes to this place that symbolizes more than just a place to sit. Okay, so we'll see you in the next video.